everybody.
This is Mark and Michelle.
Episode 10.
And we're here to share our story of losing autism. We met and married in 1994. After 17 years of marriage, we figured out Mark had Asperger's syndrome. Year 18, he got a diagnosis. Year 19, we started a journey that would lead us to where we are today, autism-free.
All right. We thought we should let everybody know what we're here for. We just took an epic vacation, and we're not quite down from it yet. It was amazing. We experienced several cities and towns, and we also saw 4 people that had not seen Mark since he lost his autism, that we had relationships with in Atlanta. So that was really cool.
Yeah, now I'll add to that 4 people that I haven't seen since I lost my autism. Because oddly enough, those 4 people, they didn't seem to notice any big changes. But as I told one of the people from our time in Atlanta, is that autism is a hidden handicap, and so you mostly see the issues in communication and social situations and that type of thing. But Michelle has some questions.
I have some questions. You mentioned having a new perspective on our current city, Oklahoma City. Could you explain how this trip changed that perspective?
Well, Oklahoma as a state is boom or bust. It's kind of always been that way. Even when I was a kid, if oil was doing good, the state was doing good. I should say doing well, either way. And so Oklahoma, like many cities in the U.S., has areas that are economically oppressed. And so I just thought that was just, endemic to Oklahoma. And having lost my autism, going on this vacation and seeing other areas of the country, in this case Louisiana, parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida, I realized that Oklahoma isn't really doing any worse off than anywhere else economically. Other states have economically depressed areas and that kind of thing. We went through Alexandria, Shreveport, Louisiana. We went all the way down to New Orleans, and then from there we went over to Pensacola, Florida, through parts of southern Mississippi and Alabama. And I realized as I got back here that where we live now, really is a cool place to live. And it made me appreciate my home state and my home city, hometown, if you want to call it that, kind of in a new light, realizing that I was the one who had to change my perspective on what I saw and realize that I'm really in a cool place.
But we hadn't really traveled except to St. Louis the last 7 years that we've lived here.
True.
So you have not seen anywhere else Aspie-free.
Well, Albuquerque and Santa Fe would be the only other areas, and those are very different worlds than here in the Midwest or even in the South. And so we'll go back to those areas, that area, back to New Mexico when we can. But having lost a lot of the heavy metals on the medical medium detox diet, I think I'm very aware of how things are now.
Yeah, so, you haven't been there since that happened.
Exactly. So that will be a new change. That will be a new perspective too.
Right. Okay. From a new NT point of view, neurotypical, as in no more autism, what was the most striking revelation you experienced on this trip?
Well, that had to be in New Orleans, but it wasn't specific to New Orleans. Having lost the autism, I now see a depth in people that I never saw as an Aspie. And that is actually fascinating. That makes the world a very interesting place to live, to be, to see, that kind of thing. And New Orleans is ethnically diverse. So is Oklahoma City, but New Orleans is a much bigger city. But then going to Pensacola a few days later, I noticed the same thing. And talking to our friends that were there, family and that type of thing in Pensacola, I found out that not only is it ethnically diverse, but it's geographically diverse. There are people from all over the country and all over the world in Pensacola. And while some people call that area of Florida the Redneck Riviera, it's a very interesting place. And I realized one of the biggest things losing my autism is people are far more interesting than I thought they were. I just thought they were two-dimensional cutouts, cartoon characters, almost stereotypes of real human beings. But now I see that there are real human beings in each one of those bodies, and I find that very interesting.
Which leads me to, we saw 4 people from our past. How do you see them differently than you did when you knew them and were autistic? What is the difference in perception of those particular people?
Okay. Well, I'm going to mention their names, but that's
just
okay.
First names.
Exactly. Joey is someone that Michelle knew and played with in Atlanta. He's a trumpet player. And,
played as in music.
Yeah, right. And he was giving her trumpet lessons, and she was learning certain jazz things from him and that type of stuff. And it was funny in Atlanta. And like I told Joey when I saw him, my memories prior to losing the autism are very random and disjunct. What I mean by disjunct is they're not long stretches of memory that flow together. Now, maybe that's normal for most people, but when I was autistic, it would just be memories that really made no sense. They were absolutely random, and I just remembered them without any context really to any other memories. I guess that's what I'm saying. And so as I told Joey, because he's like, you really don't seem any different. I said, well, I see your point. But I said, my memories of you guys, of you and Kim Ellen, are very random. There aren't, for instance, they're not holiday memories, which like a whole day spent together. I just don't remember things like that. And
well, for instance, we saw Lynn, who was the best man at our wedding.
Exactly.
And he thought she was the friend of the matron of honor. What would we call him? Anyway, she was actually my friend. I knew her before I met Mark, but Mark didn't put together that I was friends with her back then.
Right, yeah, I didn't know that. And I only found that out as we were sitting there waiting on her. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, see, I just didn't know that.
Right.
And so
that's an autism thing for sure.
It is, because it's a social thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, it's a social relationship.
Right.
I didn't know that. Well, I might have known that as a fact, but I definitely didn't remember it. And so when Lynn, being our best man, when she finally sat down, here's what I saw. I saw more than just the physical person. I actually saw all the emotions that really make her up. And that's really cool because, again, people just seem very two-dimensional to me. And that's all I saw in people were like cartoon cutouts walking across the landscape, And each individual person has an emotional world that is their own. And I'm seeing that for the first time. And that was really cool. Joey, he's a really funny guy, really sharp-witted guy. I mean, most people aren't like Joey in that sense. He's really sharp-witted, and he's very funny. And it's funny because he's not as tall as Michelle and I, but there's a lot in Joey that he tries to hold back, and so it doesn't. So little peeps come out here and there. But he's very funny because he seems really controlled, but then things come out, and that makes it even funnier.
Yeah.
And Lynn, our best man, she was really a loving, caring person.
Mm-hmm.
And that I thought was cool because I never saw that before in her. And then the other people that we saw were actually Michelle's cousin,
mm-hmm.
Dana and Michelle.
And I was in a girl band with them.
Yep, Satin Bridges.
Yeah,
and
long time ago.
That was back in 2008 and 2009. But Michelle and Dana, here's what I saw in them. And I hung around them a good bit, so I have memories of them, but they're flat memories without any dimension other than X and Y. And Dana is really funny. She just goes with the flow. No matter what it is, she's happy to do it. And she's a very forgiving person. And I thought that was really cool because I never really saw that in Dana before. And Michelle, her wife, Michelle is a cool person. She grew up in Pensacola, but Michelle's very supportive. She's very thoughtful.
Very thoughtful.
And quiet. She's funny too, but she's not as extroverted as Dana. And I actually thought that was cool. They like to do some of the things we like to do: hang out at the beach at night at sunset, and eat good seafood.
So referring back to the conversation with Lynn that we talked to her for 2.5 hours, which was really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
What did you learn in talking with her that you have to offer to people? What did you know that she hadn't even considered before?
Well, my memory isn't as good now as it used to be. As an Aspie, I could easily remember facts and spout them back. I could easily remember conversations and replay them almost in the same voice and the same style and everything else. Now as an NT, my memory is not nearly as good. I think what she said, what we had to offer is our very deep perspective into autism.
I was asking you what you learned that you knew that wowed her, that she had never thought of, or anything like that.
I don't remember, to be honest. It's only been a few days, but I just don't remember. That's my NT memory now. So it doesn't remember yesterday's breakfast, let alone what happened last week. To whereas as an Aspie, I could remember all that stuff, at least as facts. But no, I don't remember. Do you? Because I don't.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
We did a live at the beach.
Yes,
and
we did.
You can watch that. Could you sum up all the times we spent there at the beach, how it affected you, and what affected you about the beach? That was new.
I like the mountains. Now, I haven't been to a beach since 2009, and we went to Pensacola before we moved from Atlanta. Well, we went to Savannah too in 2011. So I haven't been to the beach really since 2011. And I like the mountains too, even though I haven't really been to the mountains recently either. But what I found is, while I like the mountains and the cool, crisp air there and that type of thing, the beach has a pull that makes you anticipate it before you get to it. And so as we climbed over the dunes, on the steps and the boardwalks, the waves, the dynamic kinetic motion of the beach, of the ocean, really entrances you, and you might say it massages your soul to sound hallmarky about it, but it really calms you down. Maybe because of the constant sound of the waves crashing and that kind of thing, but then the nice water around your feet and that type of thing. The ocean is very dynamic, and while that was only the Gulf, which is not to me as dynamic as the actual Atlantic seaboard, it's still the colors, the smell, and the colors were a light bluish green of the water close to shore, and then a darker blue further out. Then what did I say? Oh, the animals. We came across. We saw a few. I saw a few hermit crabs from a distance. I thought that was really cool. But we saw a blue heron that Michelle got live video of. He was eating, I guess. He or she was eating.
Getting clams.
Okay, exactly. And so I find that each place I go to is a whole universe of its own, and you're infringing on that, not necessarily in a negative way, but you're infringing on that, you're entering that, and experiencing the whole thing all at once. As an Aspie, it was hard to connect with any of that. I mean, I could notice the smell, I noticed the ocean, but they didn't have, I'd say they had a spiritual impact, that being a self-involved emotional impact on me. And I think that she would say the same thing for her. Mm-hmm. But now when I go to these places, it's like entering a whole different world or universe, whatever you want to call it, and I get to experience all of it at once instead of just random bits and pieces that my turned off senses when I was autistic would only allow me to experience. So
what was the most noticeable thing you've never noticed before at any location?
most noticeable most noticeable thing is I've recovered so much now that I actually notice other people's emotions almost right away. Not instantly like her. She's very empathic, so she always gets them quickly. But after a few minutes, I start to sense people where they're at. Lynn kind of felt rushed when she sat down, but that's because she got lost, and so she was late. But the waitresses at the place we ate at, they all felt very rushed and not quite stressed out, but close to it. And Michelle was actually excited because Lynn was somebody. When was the last time? 2006?
Yes.
2006 was the last time we saw her. And again, my memories of her hardly exist. And we were at a party at her mom's house. But Michelle was excited to re-engage with a whole world of emotion, so to speak, on two legs.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really how people are. And that's what I missed when I was autistic, is the world of emotion on two legs that each individual person is. And some people you don't want to engage with because their world of emotion is scary and angry and whatever. But then most other people, if you engage with them in the right situation, they're interesting. And walking down Bourbon Street or Royal Street in the French Quarter of New Orleans was really cool.
Yep.
Because there were lots of blues and jazz singers and a lot of people playing their hearts out. There was a guy playing the drums, young guy, wasn't he? I think he was maybe in his 20s. And he was just banging away, but he was good and he was having fun. But then the guys we met in the record store, in the jazz record store on Frenchman Street, really liked, that one guy really liked being there and doing that.
Yep.
And being the record and vinyl guru. And that's the things I see now. In other words, there is a whole world out there now. It's not just, it's really like going from radio. I used to say black and white TV, but it's really like going from radio when you're autistic, or when I was autistic, to Cinemax 3D in color now. When I'm not autistic, it's a whole world that I didn't know was there, and it's a whole frontier now for me to explore, and I don't have to go to space to do it. So, does that help? Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We had a great time.
We did have a great time. We did, and you and I think, grew some more together.
Yes.
You had to drive a lot, but while we were there, I really think the place we stayed was called the Okra Inn.
That was in New Orleans.
We
highly recommend it.
The Okra Inn, and it's on Iberville Street at not Canal Street, Carrollton. And a really cool place behind Walgreens or CVS, but that didn't matter. Yeah, we sat out in the front porch after we got back from the French Quarter that first night, and I smoked my pipe, and we sat there and talked and watched people go by, and
it was just dripping with atmosphere.
It really was. And so, and see, I could see that atmosphere now as an Aspie, as an autistic person. I didn't notice that atmosphere. Atmosphere impacts you emotionally, and mainly, but then between the smells and the sights and the sounds, between the physical and emotional, that's how you pick up the atmosphere. And if all of those senses are turned way down because of your autism or my autism, you're missing out on a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun because he was feeling and hearing what I was hearing and feeling, and we could share.
Yeah, exactly.
That was really cool.
Well, her excitement at Bourbon Street, at all the, as she called it, it was like a vending machine
for music.
A vending machine for jazz and blues.
Yeah.
And because you'd walk into the next block, and on either side of the street would be one bar playing something else, and the other bar playing something else.
It was
walk
amazing.
Down, another bar playing even something else. And so it wound up being a cornucopia, an overflowing cornucopia of music for her. And she was really impacted by it. And New Orleans itself is absolutely beautiful. I lived in the South most of my life, but Louisiana was the one southern state I'd never been to. And so going to New Orleans, it's absolutely fascinating. The Garden District is beautiful. The houses, the architecture, the people. I would say definitely southern.
Yes.
And in fact, to me, you wouldn't even know they had a hurricane. I mean, just nobody talked about it. I heard no one asking about it. People were just like, eh, and they're living their lives, you know. And I thought that was really cool. There wasn't the hustle and bustle of some cities you get into. I didn't feel the rat race.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
then that may be because it was also summer and there were lots of tourists there.
Lots of tourists.
But anyway, but that was my experience experiencing New Orleans with her and Pensacola.
Yes.
And old friends from Atlanta.
Yeah, that was amazing. It was just all around amazing. And that's 20 minutes.
That is 20 minutes, and we're going to let you go, and we'll be back again on our regularly scheduled time and day on next Saturday at 3 p.m. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye-bye.